everybody. Hey! Okay, so the important thing. When is the Nerf War?
Friday.
This Friday, 6 to 9. Cool. Thank you. Just want to remind you that. So, the other thing that you should tell your parents is that we have a parent night on the 30th. On the parent night, what will happen is they're actually going to be able to come have a meeting beforehand at 5 o'clock. After that, they are going to sit in with the lesson, and then they're going to have their own small group at the end. So you guys will still have your own small groups, and they will have their own small group of parents. Cool? Yes? You do not have to bring your own. We have a ton of them, but if you want to bring your own, you can.
Jake, do you know where the guns are?
Yes. Kaden.
How often are we doing this?
Are we doing what?
How often are we doing this? How often are these?
One time.
Once, whenever we want to. It basically is whenever I think about it a few months in advance. Anyways, so tonight we're going to answer 3 questions. I wrote them up here in my terrible handwriting. How was God born? Which will be Ben. Is it a sin to worry?
That's not the question.
Well, that's part of the question. It's basic version of the question.
I think Jesus.
Did Jesus worry and is it a sin to worry?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
You're good. And when you love someone, why does it hurt so much if they leave? Those are our 3 questions. It will go Ben, Miss Deanna, and Miss Janelle. Ben, you don't get a mister, sorry. Anyways, please give Ben your attention. Yes, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, keep the applause for Adam. It's gonna be great, okay?
I know you.
I know you too, maybe. So, like Jake said, we're gonna be in. Excuse me. No, I'm just kidding. Oh no, yeah, no. But for you guys, if we could keep the noise down, I haven't been up here in a while, and if I hear talking, it does kind of distract me. So, thank you guys. But yeah, no. Like Jake said, I'm gonna answer the question: how was God? Okay. Well, how was God born? That's a question mark. I just erased it. But how was God born? So, to start that conversation, let's go over some important dates in history. When I was born was August 31st, 2002. When Abraham Lincoln was born, that was February 12th, 1809. When Napoleon was born, Napoleon, not dynamite, that's a different thing. Napoleon the Conqueror. He was born August 15th, 1769. George Washington, you know, the first president of the United States, he crossed the river. He was born February 22nd, 1732. Muhammad was born the year 570 AD. So that's a big jump there, but 570 years after Christ. And then Aristotle was born before Christ. Aristotle, he was a Greek philosopher. He was really cool. He was really smart. He was born in the year 384 BC, which is like before Christ. And then when Alexander the Great was born, which was July 356 BC. So this list could just go on into infinity, but the point is that all of these names, all of these items that I just said, have something in common. Every single one of those people were born at some point. So why is this relevant? Well, because, like I said, I'm answering the question, how was God born? Now, without further delay, the answer you've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. How was God born? He wasn't.
What?
He wasn't born. To be completely honest with all of you, when I got this question, or when I chose this question, I kind of chose it because I thought it was going to be really easy to answer and really simple. But actually, the more that I looked into it, the more nuanced and complicated it became. See, it's easy enough to just say, boom, God was born, or wasn't born. Take 2. It's easy enough to say, boom, God wasn't born, the end. But it's kind of hard to understand because, you know, we're very finite creatures, and it's hard to understand, boom, God wasn't born. The Bible makes it clear that God has always existed and always will. Psalm 90 verse 2 says that before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. It's actually really fascinating. A lot of the other religions at the time that this verse was written actually had a lot of like origin stories for their gods. They had like stories of how their gods came to be, which is kind of interesting because it shows that we humans have a really hard time understanding something to be eternal or infinite, right? Something has to have a beginning. At least that's what makes sense in our heads. So, again, like I said earlier, the biggest reason we have such a hard time understanding eternity is because we're time-bound. You know, we're born, and in this life, we die. Sure, that might just be temporary, but the point remains that for now, that's all we know. We're born, and then we die. So, God isn't like that at all, though. He didn't come from somewhere or is the creation of something else. He is. That's kind of an odd way of putting it, but at the end of the day, that's the best way to put it. God simply is. See, this is going to get complicated here, so just if this doesn't make sense, that's okay. But time is simply another way to measure existence, and God is pretty good at denying our measurements. In other words, whenever we try to quantify God or put him into like a specific box, it usually doesn't work out, and we usually end up pretty confused. God has been before creation, continues to be through creation, and will be forever on. God is. God has no beginning, he has no end, he wasn't born, and he's only died once. And as far as I'm concerned, he bounced back from that one pretty well. I'm talking about Jesus on the cross, for anyone confused. And if you're so confused about all of this, don't worry. I still kind of am too. But I think that's okay. God doesn't demand that we understand every aspect of him, because that would be ridiculous. God wants a relationship, and part of relationships is over time learning and growing closer and learning more and more about someone. So it's okay if we don't understand everything about God right away, or if something just won't make sense to us in this life, or maybe even beyond, who knows. But the point is that we're growing closer to God through that. So, how was God born? He wasn't. He always was, and lucky for us, he always will be. Thank you. I know it's a little bit shorter than I thought it was going to be. I apologize.
You're so cool.
Thank you. I know.
You're like a dad. I also know you. Well, how? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I didn't write the chapter. Oh, yes, now. So I'm writing some Bible verses on the board. If I could have people read for me, because you guys know I kind of struggle with that, I would be greatly appreciative. There are Bibles up there.
I got it. I can read it.
Yes, Ben.
All of them?
I can beat you though.
All of the Bible verses.
The whole Bible, please. The whole Bible, right now.
It's going to be a long youth group. Protect your parents. We're reading the whole Bible out
The
loud.
whole Bible. We didn't talk about reading the
and your parents. Bible
Okay, these are going to be
Bible
the
and
verses
Daniel.
that I'm going to need somebody to take. So who wants the first one?
I got the first one.
Okay, Ben said. Okay.
I'll do the third.
Okay, whoever said
I'll
go.
third.
I'll take whichever one that's open.
So Ben, Ariana, and no, Rachel. Sorry. I'm taking the third one.
I can do the second one then.
Oh,
Okay.
Cool.
Alright, so I'll ask you to read it in a minute. Alright, so my question was, is it a sin to worry, and did Jesus sin because he was worrying? Alright, so, is it hot in here?
Yeah.
Extremely.
No, it's warm. It's warm.
Okay. So the first thing I want to do is see what the Bible tells us about worrying in the first place. So I'm going to, Ben, you start off with Luke 12:22, and please read through 29.
Luke 12, starting in verse 22. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wildflowers grow. they do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it.
Awesome. Okay, let's read Philippians 4:6.
Philippians 4, verse 6.
Yes.
Okay. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God.
All right, and Proverbs 12:25.
Anxiety in the heart of man causes depression, but a good word makes it glad.
All right, so what does the Bible say about worrying? Don't do it, right? And if we're not supposed to do it, it's probably a what? A sin, right? So the question really comes from when Jesus was getting ready to die on the cross, he started sweating blood. You guys remember that part? We can read it, but I think most of you probably know that. And so people were wondering, is Jesus sinning because he's worrying so badly that he is literally bleeding out of his pores? But he was not worrying. So you're probably wondering why. He wasn't worrying. He was actually dealing with anguish. So there's a difference between worry and there's a difference between anguish. So worry is like concentrated concern or anxiety. So it's something that's constantly on your mind over and over and over again. Does anybody ever have something that they're just like constantly worrying about? Yes, you're human, right? It's really hard to say like not to worry, right? So I have two friends right now and they both have pretty aggressive cancer and it's like really hard not to worry about them. But you just have to trust in the Lord that he will heal them and if he doesn't, then it is what it is. But it's really hard not to worry. So Jesus was actually in anguish, and anguish is the cause of suffering and pain. So it's kind of like, the best way I could describe it is like a woman who's going to give birth. Now, which is really hard for all of you to relate to because you haven't given birth. I don't think anybody in this room except for me and Miss Janelle maybe. And so when I'm getting ready to have Michaela, I was worried and scared to a point, and then you get to like 9 months and your due date comes and goes and you're like, dear Lord, get her out, right? Now, I wasn't scared of or worried about her or me. I was kind of in anguish because I knew I was going to go through some extreme pain. So does that help you guys understand like how Jesus was kind of like nervous or kind of the anguish was so much? It wasn't that he was worried about it. He already knew it was going to happen, but he did have some anguish about the pain that he was going to endure. And we all know how bad a crucifixion is. So that's my story, or my answer, kind of short and sweet. But Jesus really just doesn't want us to worry because what it does overall is it consumes our minds and our heart and our soul, right? If I'm worried about my friend that has cancer or I'm worried about whatever the situation is, I'm not thinking about God. I'm thinking about that situation. And it doesn't matter how many times I think about my friend Dina who has cancer, it's not going to make her cancer go away. She still has it. She's still going to struggle. So I need to like kind of put my mind and my burdens on God and let him just be there for her and be there for me. So I think that's why God pushes us not to worry, is because it just consumes us. And it doesn't really do anything positive. And I'm queen of worry. So this is something that I was convicted on when whoever asked this question, like, is worry a sin? Well, I'm really sinning lately, so I need to work on that. But anyways, I can't make it any longer than that for my 7 minutes. Sorry, Jake. But I think it was quick and to the point. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions? Do you understand why it wasn't worry and why it was anguish? I'm open to answering anything real quick. All right. Thank you for listening. And now I'm Ms.
I know her.
I also know you.
I know you. Woo! All right.
So, the question I'm going to be answering for you guys is, why does it hurt so bad when someone you love leaves? Which, first off, I don't know if the person who wrote this question is in the room, but I think a lot of us can relate to this question. And I'm sorry if you relate to this question because it does hurt when someone that you love leaves. And I'm sorry for the pain that you've been through. It's not fun. So when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about the ways that we protect ourselves from feeling hurt and the ways that sometimes we build walls around our hearts, basically invisible walls that are to protect us from pain. But they also trap us inside like a prison and we're alone in there and it's not awesome. So I just want to say love requires vulnerability. And vulnerability, if you guys know what that word means, it just means like it can be that you're almost weak, like you are able to be hurt, right? You can be targeted, you can be hurt. But love requires vulnerability, and that's just a reality. God himself became vulnerable through loving people, right? So he can be hurt by us because he loves us. So that's just a reality that goes with love. It doesn't mean that love is something that you shouldn't pursue because it could hurt, you could get hurt. Like that's still worth pursuing, even though you could get hurt. So for example, I got married. I could have been like had a better wall around my heart if I hadn't got married, because then I wouldn't have a husband that could leave me or die or have an affair or whatever. Like I could have just been like, no husband, no marital problems, right? And that's one option, right? No husband, no wife, no marital problems. And yet it can be worth it to get married and pursue that, right? It's not for everybody, but for people who choose that, you're making yourself vulnerable. I could have decided, I don't want to have kids because my kids could break my heart. I don't want to have kids. They could grow up and make horrible choices and break my heart. That's a possibility. You guys could break your parents' hearts, like, right? But it doesn't make it not worthwhile, right? It's not, again, it's not for everybody, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen just because there's risk involved. Same thing with friends. So you guys could say, you know what? Friend drama is so painful, I don't want to have any friends, and then I won't have any friend drama. Solution! No problems, right? You don't have any friends, you don't have any friends. No, that's probably not good for you, right? You need love in your life. Every single person was made in the image of God, and I think one of the deepest imprints on our hearts from that is that we are made for relationship, we're made for love, and we're made to love other people. So it is true that when people leave, or when you feel betrayed, or various things can happen, that you can be incredibly hurt, and that's a reality, and it goes with love. But I would say, even if you've experienced pain and hurt because of love, don't give up on it. Love anyway, and heal and love anyway. So I was trying to think of, because I obviously don't have like the information from this specific person on what the situation was that the person left. Like, I don't know if that was like they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or I don't know if it was maybe their parent walked out on their family. That happens to people. It could be that someone died. That's a form of leaving, right? And someone could have died and left you here without them. They could have moved away. It could have been a lot of different things. It could have been a friend that slowly drifted away, or it could have been any kind of leaving. And there are some aspects of leaving that's like, that person sinned against you, right? So if I cheated on my husband and left him, that'd be sinning against him, right? That would be, if I sinned against him and hurt him that way, it would be my fault that I did that to him, right? So there's that kind of loss of relationship, or a hurt to a relationship. And there's also stuff that's just outside of our control. If I just died of a sudden stroke or heart attack or something, that could happen, and that would hurt him too, but that's not a sin, right? So there's all kinds of things that can lead to loss of relationship, and I think that there are some things that you guys can do to protect yourselves in some ways. You're never gonna have a perfectly safe castle around your heart that no arrows can ever hurt you, right? If you're gonna love people and have a relationship with people, you're opening yourself up to hurt. But I did have a couple things I wanted to suggest to you guys that can prevent unnecessary pain. Because some pain that we go through is necessary, some pain that we go through is kind of self-inflicted, right? Or unnecessary. You could have avoided it, but you didn't. So these are just some things for you guys to think about. I know we all want to protect ourselves and not get hurt, which is not going to happen in this life. But there are some things we can do to avoid unnecessary pain. So one of those things is that if you find your identity in a wrong way in your relationships, when those relationships have problems or when they cut out of your life and you lose somebody, it affects you way, way worse than if your relationship with God is at the forefront of your life. So for instance, if I am all about my family, like my whole identity is that I'm a mom and a wife and that's my whole identity, and then my family dies in a car accident, obviously either way you're going to be really hurt by that, right? It's going to be a big loss to you. But if that was my whole identity, that would shatter me. There would be nothing left because that's who I was. But if I find my identity in God and I know that He loves me, even in the midst of this tragedy that I'm hopefully never going to experience, then I still have something left, and I still will be, I'm loved, and I'm still a person. I'm still a whole person, even though I have this huge loss in my life. Does that make sense? So if you find your identity, like let's say, and I see this a lot. No offense to anybody here, I'm not talking about anyone specific, but I see this a lot with youth who are dating somebody. They are like, oh my goodness, my boyfriend is the best, and I am all about my boyfriend, and then my whole life is my boyfriend, right? Or girlfriend if it's the other way around. So if that's you, and your boyfriend or girlfriend leaves, like Deanna kind of shared this story from her life when she was doing the dating talk, that she was dating a guy, and she was like, I'm gonna marry him, it's gonna be great, and he was like, I'm going to college, break it up with you. And she was really shattered by that, right? Because she had this expectation of a permanent relationship with this guy that left. And I think it's normal to hope for that when you're dating somebody, right? It's normal to hope that you guys are going to stay together. But I would say you're not married yet, so guard your heart a little bit and don't give it completely away. It's not theirs yet. They didn't marry you. And even if they do marry you, you're God's first. You don't belong first to your wife or your husband. You belong first to God. Again, that identity thing. So that's one suggestion. The next suggestion is you guys have seen, I think Jake even did the circles. So like this is you have your inner circle people, like, and then like acquaintances way out there. You have some say about who you let in here to your inner circle. And it's okay if someone wants to be in that circle and you say no to them because they don't meet the requirements to be there. So let's say you have someone who's super unhealthy and they are always emotionally stabbing you in the heart, right? They probably shouldn't be in your inner circle. You should move them outward from your inner circle. You can still love them, care about them, want good things for them. They don't have to be in your inner circle. So not to say never love people who are broken, because guess what? All of us are broken. All of us are going to mess up. All of us are going to hurt people or say things that are rude or whatever it is that hurts people. We're all going to do that, but you can try to get healthy people in your closest circles and love other people who are not healthy enough to be in that inner circle a little bit farther out. Does that make sense to people? Yeah.
What do you mean by healthy?
Healthy. I would say it probably relates to if they love you for you, right? If they're not trying to get something from you. If they're not, I want to say self-centered in the midst of the relationship. If they love you for who you are and they want good things for you, that's like healthy, right? If you are being dragged down by them, if they're like drawing you into sin patterns or into dark places that you shouldn't be going, then that's unhealthy for you. You know, maybe that friend would be fine for someone else, but for you, that would be an unhealthy friend. Does anyone have anything else to add to that? What would be healthy versus unhealthy?
I think if they're obsessed with you.
Yeah, if you are their identity.
Yes, then
That's also true. Because then their whole life is centered on you, and that's not healthy for you. You become their God in a sense, and that's not okay. So that's hard sometimes to figure out or to navigate. Ben, do you have anything else you would add?
or they're abusive.
Yeah, physically or emotionally abusive, definitely not healthy.
Right. Like, if they're doing anything that you don't think you would do to someone else because you think that would be wrong or bad or rude, then that's usually a good sign
Yeah.
that they're not in a good spot. Sorry, that was a bad time. I started talking and I got like a bunch of gunk in my throat. But yeah, no, like if they're doing stuff that you wouldn't do to someone else because you think it's like bad, that's usually a good sign that they're probably not very healthy.
Yeah, and again, all of us are going to make mistakes, so it's not like, oh, I saw a mistake in my friend Deanna, so I'm not going to be her friend anymore. She's going to go in the outer circle. Like, no. You have to use your discernment about whether someone is doing something that's actually dragging you down or is making them unsafe for you to be in a close relationship with, versus people sinning against each other, which happens all the time, whether they mean to or not, right? So use your discernment. But I will say, sometimes I see people getting hurt, and it's because they're wrong in their hearts about their, like I talked about the boyfriend and girlfriend thing, where they're overly like giving their heart away to them when they're not at that place in a relationship yet, or when they have the wrong people in those close relationships that they really should be not in that closer relationship with that person. And then again, just to conclude, love requires vulnerability. But it's worth it. God it was worth it. He is love, and He is perfect love, and He loves people even though we hurt Him. So my advice to you is love anyway. Good job.
Okay, there, guys. So, if you want to add questions to the questions box, I found it. It was in my house. So
It was on our It was on our coffee table.
I forgot about it, and then I remembered it. So, if you have any questions to add, we still have room for more questions for this kind of go through of questions uncensored. And then if there's like 1,000 of them, we do questions uncensored twice a year, so we will get to it eventually. Okay. So, add questions. There's paper in there, and there's pens. Shove them in there. You can sign it if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to. With that, we are going to go to small groups. If you are a middle school girl, you'll be up here with Deanna. If you're a high school girl, you'll be with Miss Janelle. If you're a middle school guy, you'll be with Ben. If you're a high school guy, you'll be with me, and we're going to meet in the foyer really quick. What's the foyer?
Look how fire. She chose that outfit too. She chose that outfit too. I kind of wish that was. Yeah, dude, that would be fun.
Yes.
I want to write something in the box. Okay.
Yes, sir. Oh, they're gluten free? Alright.
Yeah. I'm gonna write down my report. You're like a reporter. You're like.